Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing my next episode in my palette roulette series in which I pick a palette in my collection that might also be in your collection. I utilize it for a couple weeks. I come back to you, I talk to you about my experiences with the palette, show you some pictures of the looks I was able to create, show you some swatches, and then pick another palette in a review-like system. I try and be as thorough as possible, telling you about my experiences with the palettes, and then we do this all over again. And I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. This isn't about the newest thing on the market. As a matter of fact, the palettes that I have to review today are quite old on the market, but they're palettes that I had not utilized in my palette collection up until this point. One of them I just purchased not that long ago, and one of them I received as a gift from my mom. So I hope that sounds like something you're interested in. I hope that you'll want to stick around, watch the video. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty, and I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education here on my platform. But ultimately, I'm just out here talking about makeup because I love to talk about makeup, and I'm certain if you're here, you also like to talk about makeup or listen to somebody drone on and on and on about makeup. So I hope that you find solace in your soul for this channel in the way that it brings solace to my soul, and that you'll want to subscribe before you go. With that said, let's roll into this palette roulette review of these two palettes right here. I have the Stone Cold Fox by ColourPop and Lime Crime Venus 3. All right, elephant in the room. Yes, my hair was changed. So my district doesn't have a whole lot of time amongst the salon professionals, and I have been struggling to get in to get my hair done. Y'all have seen that. My roots were so bad, so bad. But last week I was in the Oregon market and I was able to get into a salon where their day had just totally fallen apart, and I was like, let me help you. It happened to be the last one on my agenda for the day. I also got a facial done by one of our skincare experts, and I don't have any skincare experts in my market, so that was a treat. So my hair got done. I do still have purple on my scalp, but it is like a deep dark purple. There's some red, there's some blue, there's some black in here even. And I am super excited about this color. Super excited about this cut. I'm feeling like a whole new person. So let's dig in to these two palettes. So today I'm going to be going over the ColourPop Stone Cold Fox palette. This did launch in 2020, I do believe. I think I'm right on that. And I, at that point in time, was not into the cool tone vibes of this palette, but these days I am feeling a little bit more cool tone self. So I did pick this up a few weeks ago. Well, I guess it's been more like a few months ago. I will also be going over the Lime Crime Venus 3 palette. This is a palette that my mom got in BoxyCharm and then gave to me. I do have both palettes on my eyes today. I usually, when I'm doing these, I take the two palettes that I'm doing and I do them separately and then talk about how they played together too. So we will be talking through ColourPop Cold Stone Fox first, since it is the biggest of the two, and I'm not going to be doing live swatches of all 30 of these shades in here, but I will swatch some of the favorites that I had from this palette to use over the last couple weeks. This is the ColourPop Stone Cold Fox palette. This is a $35 eyeshadow palette, and it does have 1.16 ounces of product in it, or 0.04 per pan. It does have 30 shades of eyeshadow in it, and all of them are like cool tone, mauve grays kind of thought process. The front of the palette just looks like this. It is kind of matte and kind of textured. It has this like little like stonework is what it looks like on the front of the palette. Just cardboard packaging. My fingernails are purple because of the purple on my scalp. Sorry guys. Like, I'm not making excuses for it. It just is what it is. But you're gonna see it and it's gonna look gross, but I promise you they're not dirty. It does have that textured like stone wall appearance, like cobblestones almost, on the front of the palette and the back of the palette. And the back of the palette does have all the shades and the shade names. Well, not all the shades. You can't see a picture of the shades, but it does have every single little circle with the shade name on the back of the palette. It does tell you that it's cruelty free, and then it gives you the net weight and some of the information about ColourPop on the back of the palette. When you open it up, it just looks like this on the inside. It says ColourPop. There is no mirror, obviously. The inside of the palette looks like this. This is matte, so it is not going to wipe off super easy if you get product all over it. And I will say that it is super easy to get product all over this because the mattes, the shadows in here are kind of powdery. So you're not going to be able to wipe off whatever color you get on this palette. What I do love about this palette is that even though the information is on the back as far as the shade names go, they are also on the palette itself, which isn't always the case when the shade names are on the back of the palette. And I kind of don't love it when they do this because you never know. Truly, yes, I know we read right to left, but you never know really when you flip it over if this color here is what the shade over here on this side is called, or if they're trying to mirror it so that you know how to work it. I've always gotten confused when the shade names are only on the back of the palette like this, and maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe it's just a me thing. This is cardboard packaging. It does have a really nice magnet to it. It's not, I would say, horribly strong, so that, you know, if you're carrying it in a suitcase and something gets up in here and nudges this open, it will open. It's not a horribly strong magnet, but it's also not a strong magnet, if that makes any sense. Again, there are 30 shades in here. They are all cool tone shades, although there are some in here that do lean a little bit warm. But everything that you really need to complete an eye look, especially for a work appropriate eye look if you're into cool tones. There are 17 mattes, there are 9 metallic shimmers, and there are 4 mattes with glitter. Y'all know how I feel about mattes with glitter. I think that it's kind of stupid to have mattes with a glitter in them in a palette, and I think or feel some sort of way about mattes with glitter. I feel like it lends to a little bit more patchiness, honestly, on the blend for those mattes specifically. But I do have to be honest, I did not get a lot of that with this palette, with the mattes that do have glitter in them. This one is one of them, and then this one is one of them. The white is one of them, and the white is in my brow bone. And then this one is also one of them. And the glitter in these is pretty packed, but I still don't know that you'll be able to, well, you can kind of see it in this one here. They are pretty extensively packed with glitter, and if you wet them, the glitter will show up. But if you're just using it on a blend, it is actually a shade that doesn't appear to have glitter in it once you've got it blended out. This palette does have a 4.1 star rating on Ulta Beauty, and that comprises of 134 reviews. A 4.9 star on ColourPop with 738 reviews, and I do have to just shout this out here. There are 0 1 or 2 star reviews on ColourPop, so take that star rating as you will. And a 4.6 star on Google with 973 reviews. I would say that this is probably a 4.5 star palette for me, in my humble opinion. The performance of it was overall good. It was just not bad and just not great. It was kind of middle of the road performance for me. Because it's so muted in there, too many shades in an eye look could come across as very, very muddy. And that's, I think, why I went with just okay for me. I guess not just okay. It is good. I will hold on to it because I do think that it blended really, really well, to be honest. But there was a slight bit of voiding that I noticed in certain colors. It did create a little bit of voiding. Not wholeheartedly patchy on its own, in its own blend. And if you only worked with this palette in the rows that it provides you for color stories, you had an easier time with this palette. But like today, I'm actually using this shade here, and the black. And what I noticed was these two shades work perfectly well together, but when I blended this one into this one, it kind of created a little bit of a patchy moment, and I had to fix it, which is not a problem. I don't mind fixing an eye look, especially if I've, screwed it up, and I can usually make pretty much anything work for me. So the patchiness of it was minimal, and it was if you were working across rows versus within a column. The mattes were kind of really dusty, and the pigment wasn't fantastic. You do have to build it up to get the opacity out of one of these shadows that you want, which is fine as long as they build, and these definitely did build. So I do give kudos to them. They are buildable, they are blendable, and as long as you work very, very carefully, they don't become patchy or void. They are kind of firmly pressed in here, but kind of dry, honestly. Super, super prone to fallout, so making sure that you do your eyes first if you're using this palette is going to be something that you want to make a priority. Otherwise, your base is going to be destroyed. The shimmers in here were a lot more soft and softly pressed than the mattes were. And they were, I feel like, a lot more pigmented than the mattes were. They applied really, really well with or without a primer, and really, really well whether they were wet or went onto an eyelid dry. I do think that they also have a lot of fallout to them, and some of them are a little bit more chunky than others. But not horrible to get off of your skin because of how kind of more dry they are. Yes, soft, but not creamy. So they swept away really, really easily. But with that said, they didn't sweep away off of your eye look in any sort of way that was limiting to an eye look. Primers, I feel like, are essential when using this palette. And the creamier primers definitely need to be set. This does need to go over an eye that is almost dry. So you put a primer on, make sure that you set that primer with one of these shadows, or just use a drier eyeshadow primer, not a creamier version. Even the shimmers didn't go over the top of a creamy eyeshadow base very, very well. The tacky primers was a no-go for me. Primers, however, I do believe are essential to the performance of this palette, but also the wear time. I feel like you got a good 7 hours of wear time if you were using a primer, sometimes 7.5 with certain shadows. If you were not wearing a primer, you got maybe 4.5 hours. ColourPop is a cruelty-free brand, so that is super important for a lot of people, and therefore a lot of people swear by ColourPop. I will be honest with you, I'm going to keep that palette in my collection because I did have a decent time with it, and I love the eye looks that I was able to create with this palette, but also because I think it will partner well with like my Natasha Denona Glam. But if I'm honest with you, I would pull for that way before I pull for this, just because I feel like those shadows perform better and last longer. While yes, Natasha Denona is my favorite eyeshadow brand, I don't believe that ColourPop even holds a candle to a lot of the eyeshadow that I have in my collection, up to and including other drugstore options. $35 puts this kind of in the realm of like a Morphe palette. And while I do believe that this is a better formula than Morphe, I believe it's just slightly better than Morphe. And I know I might get poop for saying that, but I mean, that's truly how I feel about it. I do feel like Morphe has better right off the bat pigmentation, and honestly, I feel like better blendability than ColourPop eyeshadows, but ColourPop has better wear time. One thing that I would say about this too, just to be of note, is that there's a lot of actual redundancy in this, even though it maybe doesn't look like it. And there's a lot of colors that just don't show up on my skin tone. So I would hesitate to believe that this is dark girl friendly, to be honest. If you're much darker than me, there's an awful lot of this palette that's not going to show up on your skin and maybe actually appear a lot more chalky. This one didn't show up at all. 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 I do think that there's a lot of these shades that are just a little bit redundant, in my humble opinion. This could have been drilled down to probably a 9 or 12 pan eyeshadow palette, which I do believe they did, right? It's just taupe, or that's taupe, or I don't know. They have quite a few 9 pan eyeshadow palettes that are, you know, cooler toned. And I think that if you're looking at ColourPop and looking at a cool tone eyeshadow palette, those are the ones that I would suggest you purchase before this one. One thing that I love about ColourPop's eyeshadow palettes is that their pans of eyeshadow in these palettes are removable. You can take them out. It's just a magnetic palette with magnetic pans in it, which is fantastic, because at the end of the day, I can take the colors out of this that I want to keep and get rid of the ones that I don't want to keep. With that also said, these are smaller than their regular eyeshadow pans. So like if single eyeshadow pans, so they're not necessarily interchangeable with a regular eyeshadow pan from ColourPop. So I would still have to put these into a magnetic Z palette and put whatever other colors I wanted with them in that Z palette. I can't necessarily take from my single shadow collection and put also into this palette with these pans, because these pans are quite a bit smaller. Those pans are usually, I think, 0.05 or 0.06 ounces, whereas these are 0.04. Not a bad palette. I mean, it really does easily blend. It really does have really beautiful shimmers in it. There's just, you know, some idiosyncrasies to it that I think could have been better, but I will hold on to it. It's got a lot of mattes in it, and at overall, like, I think that's one of the things that like the Natasha Denona Glam palette is missing for me. I didn't use the silver at all. Like Cyborg Silver usually is not a color that I put on my lids, but I did get some use out of every single one of these eyeshadows otherwise. This one kind of surprised me. I was really, really loving this shadow as like an inner corner shadow. It appears very pale pink in the palette, but it actually shows up on your skin as kind of more of a frosty white almost. It is so pretty. And then I also really love this white. Even though this does have glitter in it, this matte white here, it actually, I use this as a brow bone shade almost every single day. Look at how beautiful that white is. It is crazy how white that is. It is in my brow bone today. I used it a lot as an inner corner highlight as well. I do love a matte inner corner just because I am 46 years old and I don't need glitter all over in my inner corner. This does have a slight bit of glitter to it. It is one of the glitter mattes in the palette, but if you're using it in like your brow bone or your inner corner, that glitter actually just kind of blends away, to be honest. And then I also really loved this kind of like taupey shimmer that kind of leaned very warm, actually, which was surprising to me. Even though it was in this row, I actually felt like it went really well with these shades here and these shades and these shades here. So I used it an awful lot to partner with them. This black is not a bad black, and it is so silky smooth to the touch. It's not a bad black, but it's also like not the best black, to be honest. It is in my eye look today. I have it bounced into the outer corner just to deepen up the gray and to kind of correct some of the patchiness that happened between the gray and the kind of like taupey color. This brown was a wonderful brown. I really liked this brown as a deep like espresso. And this is actually a really beautiful maroon shade, kind of with almost a brown kick to it. Oh, so pretty. You know, it was a pleasure working with it, but it's messy because it's super powdery. Look, that black is all over the place on here. The packaging being matte kind of drives me a little bit bonkers because the shadows stain the matte packaging. You can't clean them up. It looks awful, but I do like it. I'll hang on to it. Not my favorite, but also not my least favorite. The other palette that I was working with over this last week was this Venus 3 by Lime Crime. Lime Crime is a formula that I grew quite fond of last year. Actually, I tried 2 palettes from them last year. They ranked rather high on the palettes that I tried last year. Not like super high, but also not super low. Like one of them was I think it's called the Prelude. It's the black with kind of like the red. That one actually ranked quite a bit higher than the other one that I used just because of color story. This is the Venus 3 by Lime Crime. This palette is $32, has 0.564 ounces of product in it, or 0.07 ounces of product per pan, and it has 8 shades in it. So by contrast, this is $35, and there are 30 shades in here. This is 32, and there are 8 shades. Lime Crime is considered a high-end brand. The outside of the packaging is beautiful. The back of the packaging just has a sticker over the top of it telling you about the ingredients in the palette, that it's cruelty-free and it's shelf life, which I have super old eyes and I cannot tell you what its shelf life is. I do think that it says 12 months. This was a gift that I got from my mom because she got it in a BoxyCharm and didn't see herself using it ever, so she did give it to me. The inside of the palette looks like this. It does have a mirror on it, which I think is fantastic. And these are the 8 shades. Listen, I hate the packaging of Lime Crime. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous how thick this is, but every Lime Crime palette I have is like that. And I only have 3 of the 8-pan eyeshadow palettes. I do know that they have bigger ones with like, I don't know, 24 shades in it or something. I do want like the Lime Crime XL, but I've never pulled the trigger on it. This is 8 shades with 5 different finishes in this little 8 shade eyeshadow palette. There are 3 mattes, 2 foils, 1 sparkle matte, 1 sparkle metallic, and 1 straight up metallic, which I think is, initially thinking, saying that, think it's a bunch of horse poop, but honestly, they all of the shimmers in here have a completely different finish in them. So yes, there are 5 different finishes in this palette. The website says that this is the Pretty Grunge Shadow Palette, and it is promoted as an eye and face palette because 4 of the shades in here are listed as face shades, which I believe means that they're not safe for eye use. And those are Beam, Dreamy, Bliss, in paradise. What I will tell you is that if they want them to be also face shades, then these pans need to be much larger. I don't know anybody who has a blush brush that's gonna fit in these little tiny squares. My blush brushes won't fit in these little tiny squares. However, if you get a little tiny blush brush and use that, I will tell you they do work quite well as blushes. For one of them, this one, I just patted on my cheeks one day and then kind of blended it out. After patting it on, it was beautiful, but because I had to use my finger, pat it on my face, and then go from there, it took forever to get the opacity on my face that I wanted it to have for a blush. So there's that. I would also not say that this is grunge at all. I would not say that this is even pretty grunge. I don't think this is grunge. This is a beautiful, like, angelic, like, almost Cupid-like, goddess-like color story. A Valentine's Day color story. It's definitely not a grunge color story, so where they get pretty grunge, I'm just not 100% sure. This has 4.9 stars on Lime Crime with 276 reviews. Again, just throwing it out there. There are 0, 1, 2, or 3-star reviews on Lime Crime in those 276 reviews. So take that for what you will. I don't necessarily trust those kind of reviews because where did the 1 and 2 and 3-star reviews go to? You cannot tell me that all 276 people that, you know, purchased this palette and decided to go to Lime Crime and talk about it were all 4 and 5-star review kind of people. Like, people want to tell you the bad stuff. They want to. I mean, that people want to complain. So where are those reviews at? On Ulta Beauty, this has a 4.3-star review with 175 reviews that make up that 4.3 star. I would say that that is kind of low, honestly. I would put this in the 4.4, 4.5 star rating. Maybe not the best star rating because I do think that there are some opportunities for it to go a little bit deeper than it does, and maybe some opportunities for it to have a little bit more variety than it does. There's only 3 matte shadows in here, so if you want, you know, these 3 shadows to be in every single one of your looks, like this one is like a good crease color, this is a blend out, and this is an outer corner, every eye look is almost going to look the same, to be honest, between those 3 mattes and the rest of the shimmers in here. Now, the shimmers in here are beautiful, but these 2 here look almost identical on an eye. This one here, kind of, I mean, it is in my eye look today. I think you can see a little bit of it in the like crease work up here and in the inner corner section, but I topped it with these 2 colors here because there's just no opacity to it. You can barely see it. This is a cruelty-free and vegan brand. These are not powdery. These definitely go on and do not exacerbate your face with fallout. They also don't exacerbate texture on your eyes, which I think is fantastic. And there are 2 shadows in here that I feel like glow. And one of them, both of them actually are on my eyes today, but like it looks like it's in backlit. I feel like in person, it looks like there's, you know, the cars that have like green bumpers or something like that. That's what I feel like is going on my eyeballs, like backlit blue, like a powdery blue. But the shade is definitely not blue, if that makes sense. So it's kind of duochrome, but not also. I don't know. It's so weird to explain because I definitely feel like it's lit like from within, you know, like the Becca backlight priming filter back in those days. That's how I feel like this shadow is in an eye look. And I feel like putting this underneath it is like tenfold because I also feel like this one is a little bit backlit also, but with like a purple. I think that Heavenly does kind of have this like iridescence to it. It is on like this section here of my eye look, and it kind of is lit up as well. So yeah, I think these 3 up here are just So unique and beautiful, and I could use them in every single eye look and not ever get bored with the eye look, because I just think that they're stunning. They're just stunning. The shadows here blend pretty effortlessly. They don't have any kind of fallout. There's no patchiness that happens. I would say they're not prone to voiding. They're pretty buildable. You do have to, like, this one doesn't really show up this purple in an eye look. It shows up more of like a fuchsia, and it's funny because when I was researching what the company would say that color was, they do call it fuchsia. I would think that it would look purple on an eye look. It doesn't. But as you blend or as you build it up, it does get more purple and more purple, but it stays a pretty static fuchsia. There is not pigmentation like right straight off the bat, not within first application, but they are pretty pigmented eyeshadows. You just have to kind of build them to get the opacity out of them that you want to. And this brown here is actually a really beautiful like pinky brown that is unique. Shocking, really, when you put it into an eye look. It almost doesn't lend to the depth that you want it to lend to in an eye look with just the 3 mattes, but it actually does a really good job of building to get you that depth that you want. These performed really well with or without a primer, and I did see about 7.5 hours of wear time out of them with or without a primer. I do think that, however, for me, this is just a companion palette. There just wasn't enough to it and enough depth to it to make me happy when I tried to utilize it as a one and done eyeshadow palette for me. I would say probably because of the color story of it, but man, such beautiful eyeshadows to work with. Now this one, because there are only 8 shades, I am going to swatch all of them for you. And if you're new to my channel, I do all my swatching on my hand. There is no primer or anything that I'm putting over the top of it. I just swatch all of them on my hand. I am going to do this row first across and then this row. I do think that this palette came out 5 years ago, question mark. I'm pretty sure it's a super old palette. But I mean, I guess I could be wrong on the years in out there, but I do think that it was 5 years ago. It's still for sale on the Ulta website, on the Lime Crime website. It's still for sale. So the first shade is Dreamy. Dreamy is a kind of a matte pinky mauve shade. I do think that I would have loved for it to lean a little bit more mauve. The next one is Beam. When you flip your hand, you know, you can't even see it's there. It is truly, truly a topper. It has 0 pigmentation underneath that. There is no like base shade to this, but such a beautiful eyeshadow, and it just feels like it's lit from behind it. They say it's a lilac pink foil. So then we have Heavenly. Heavenly is a rose gold foil. This one would be a beautiful highlight on, you know, like a medium tone skin. Oh my gosh, so pretty. This one is also in my eye look. I feel like this one was probably the most creamy of the shades in this palette. It's just so pretty, so easy to use, goes on really, really well, finger or brush or whatever you want to use with it. I do think that Beam does work better with your finger. And then the last one also I feel like works better with your finger, and that one is Rapture. Rapture is considered a pink blue sparkle matte. So this is a matte that has a little bit of sheeniness to it. I would say probably reminds me more of like a satiny shade. Again, it's one of those shades that when you turn your hand, like you can see this shade and you can see, you know, the Heavenly shade, but you can't see Beam and you can't see Rapture. It is definitely a topper. I feel like it works best with your fingers. It doesn't perform like a matte. Don't think that you can go in with that as a matte on your lid. It is all over my lid today, but I had to top it because it just, there was no visible. when you turn, it looked like I had a completely blank lid space. Okay, the last 4 are Ecstasy, which is slated as a matte fig. It does have a little bit of like eggplantiness to it, but also a little bit of brown. I would say it's kind of rosy. Yeah, I loved that shade. And then we have this purple that looks more fuchsia. This is called Paradise, and this is a fuchsia blue sparkle metallic. I really looked at it and thought it was a matte when I first looked at it in the palette, and then I put it on my eyes and I'm like, oh, that's definitely not a matte. It definitely doesn't perform as a matte. You can't really use it, although you can put it all over your lid. If you want to deepen it up, though, I feel like this one really didn't play well with the mattes in this eyeshadow palette, but I do feel like this one can get quite a bit deeper. This one did stain my eyes. It's the only one in this palette that stained my eyes, and I only had it on the outer like third of my eyelids, so I looked super funny walking around the next day with no eyeshadow on, but this stain all over my lid space. The next one is Bliss, and Bliss is considered a rosewood matte. It does pull a little bit more coral on my skin tone, and for me, because of that, it didn't really go super well in this palette. But I did end up using it quite a bit to blend out some of the shades in the Stone Cold Fox palette. And I do believe that these two palettes work very, very well together, but mostly because this palette works really well with itself and with other palettes. The last shade in this is called Beloved, and it is kind of a lavender, but also kind of maybe a taupe metallic is what I would say that is. So those are the shades that you're gonna get in the Lime Crime Venus 3 palette. I do think that this is a beautiful eyeshadow palette, and I also had a really good time playing with this eyeshadow palette, especially in conjunction with Stone Cold Fox. I think that the two eyeshadow palettes worked very, very well together. I think that they blended very, very nicely into each other, and I think that the color story in this one gave me a lot more of what I might desire that I wasn't getting from Stone Cold Fox in terms of color. I really enjoyed it. I'll hold on to it. I really, really like the Lime Crime shadow formula. I feel like it's a super easy shadow formula to play with, to be honest. So I'm going to go pick my new eyeshadow palette for the next couple weeks. I will be right back. Okay, so because y'all just saw my my makeup rehab series, and you know what I brought into my collection, I can't go 2 seconds without telling you how excited I am to put these on my face. So I have wanted to try Oden's Eye for quite some time, but even though there's a lot of collabs that are out there that I really wanted to like purchase, there was never one collab specifically that shouted to me as much as this one did. I am bringing in all 3 palettes from the most recent Oden's Eye collab with the 3 YouTubers that are on the palette. So I have with Makeup Just for Fun, Lauren May Beauty, and Betty Jean from Batty Bean. I am so excited to use these palettes. I don't think I have felt, well, Blend Bunny was another one that I tried out this year, but this will be, so far this year, the second indie brand that I have tried out that I have never tried before, so I'm so excited about it. So these are the 3 palettes that I will be utilizing throughout the next couple weeks, and I'll come back to you and give you my review on these palettes. These are new palettes on the market, you guys. These launched last month, and I couldn't help but pick them up because Lauren May Beauty, this lady here, is one of my favorite content creators, but also these palettes are stunning. So I am going to work with these over the next couple weeks, come back to you, talk to you about those palettes, and we will go from there. How do you guys feel about the 2 palettes that I reviewed today? Do you have Lime Crime Venus 3 or ColourPop Stone Cold Fox? I would be interested to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section. That helps me be a better reviewer, but it also helps other opinions get out there to the masses that are coming and watching these videos, so that it's not just me out here spewing all the stuff. Please give your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section. Don't forget to hit me up down there. I always respond to everybody. Sometimes it takes me a little bit, but I do still respond to every single comment that lands on my platform. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching me today. I hope that you did enjoy the video, and I hope that you enjoyed it enough that you're going to give it a thumbs up. You're going to subscribe before you go because you loved me so much, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you guys for being here. I hope that you and yours are well, that you're healthy, that you're safe, and that you're staying sane, and that you are loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye, friends.